Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. It's such a lovely day. I'm so glad the weather held up for us to be able to celebrate Alicia's launch out on the terrace. So now, as you guys know, is speech time, and for the next 45 minutes you'll be hearing from each of us as we celebrate Alicia's launch. So first I would like to acknowledge the Bedegal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land from which I am speaking today. I pay my respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here tonight. It is my pleasure to be introducing the launch event for Volume 44, Issue 4 of the University of New South Wales Law Journal, a general and the final issue of the year. A huge congratulations to Alicia Mathias, editor of Issue 44.4. Alicia has worked tirelessly over this past year to take this issue through to publication. After numerous late nights, early Saturday mornings, and many stressed voice memos, we are both relieved and delighted to be bringing you this issue. 2021 has been in many respects much more unpredictable than 2020, in my opinion, as the world begins to transition from the immediate emergency situation of the pandemic to a period of relative COVID normal. However, Alicia and the rest of the journal have adapted flexibly and resiliently to the circumstances, and I am beyond excited to be able to bring this issue to you in person and celebrate with you all. The journal is very grateful for the support of Keynote Mallisons in this launch event. Although we were regrettably unable to host an in-person launch event in their offices this year, we are incredibly lucky for the firm support of the journal over the past year, and Keynote Mallisons continues to be one of our oldest sponsors. I would like to thank in particular Sarah Morrison and Kelly Mildred for their assistance in preparing for this launch, and Peter Stevenson, partner at Keynote Mallisons, for offering to deliver the welcome to the firm. I hope that we can be back celebrating in the offices of Keynote Mallisons in the near future. With the end of my tenure quickly approaching, I thought I might use this as an opportunity to reflect briefly on what the journal has achieved over this past year. It has been my honour to be able to steer the strategic direction of one of Australia's leading law journals. Over 2021, we have successfully implemented the experimental structure of publishing 2 general issues and 2 part thematic, part general issues per year, which has allowed us to publish many excellent general articles, as well as provide a platform for scholarly legal debate on 2 extremely relevant thematic topics: rights protection amidst COVID-19 in Issue 44.1 and big technology and the law in Issue 44.3. We have also introduced the inaugural Indigenous recruitment stream in our July recruitment round to enhance Indigenous voices on the board. Next year, we will also redouble our efforts to increase not only the diversity of the editorial board, but also the articles and the authors that we publish. The UNSW Law Journal Forum, the online companion to the UNSW Law Journal, has been receiving more submissions than ever, which led us to establish the first UNSW Law Journal Forum subcommittee comprising of UNSW academics to assist with reviewing timely forum submissions. And how can I forget? Our first joint UNSW Law Journal and Court of Conscience Trivia Night held at the Roundhouse earlier this year, which we hope will become a lasting tradition between 2 noble publications of the law school. I know that I can step down with confidence as I leave the journal in the very capable hands of Darius D'Agusta, the executive editor of 2022. The theme of this launch event is filling critical gaps. This theme was chosen in recognition of a number of this issue's articles which identify and attempt through academia to fill lacunas in our existing laws. The theme was also chosen to acknowledge the growing diversity of the legal profession and how much more there is left to do. I will leave Alicia to discuss in more depth her reasons for choosing this very topical theme to lead this launch. Now I would like to thank our keynote speaker, Ms Sonja Stewart, the CEO of the Law Society of New South Wales, the first woman and first Indigenous person to hold this role. We are incredibly lucky to have Ms Stewart partake in our launch event, and we look forward to seeing what Ms Stewart accomplishes in her tenure as head of the Law Society. I would also like to extend my thanks to all the authors who are published in this issue. Thank you for entrusting us with your work and for working with us throughout the editing process. Without you, our publication would not be possible. Thank you to the UNSW Law and Justice faculty for your continual support of the journal. I would like to thank in particular Professor Andrew Lynch, Dean of the Law and Justice faculty, who will be delivering the vote of thanks. Professor Lynch has been most gracious in his support of the journal, both in his capacity as acting dean and as dean of the faculty, and we look forward to working with him in 2022. As always, I am ever grateful to our faculty advisors, Professors Rosalind Dixon and Gary Edmond, for your time, advice, and encouragement in the day-to-day running of the journal. Thank you for always lending a sympathetic ear and for imparting your wisdom in times of trouble. Special thanks must go to the Executive Committee. I am honoured to be working with some of the most incredibly bright, talented, and not to mention funny people I've met, and you make all the work we do worthwhile. I would like to welcome in particular Darius Sangosta, Callum Brunton, and Isabel Wainwright, the newest members of our Executive Committee, who will be taking up the roles of Executive Editor, Digital Editor, and Forum Editor, respectively. Finally, I would like to extend a huge thank you and congratulations to the General Editorial Board. Thank you for your attention to detail, resilience, and dedication to the journal, and we would not be here without you. It has been my privilege to be the Executive Editor of Volume 44, and I cherish each and every moment spent with my boardies and the Executive Committee this year. I would like now to hand over to Peter Stevenson, partner at King & Mallisons, to deliver the welcome to the firm over a video.
As I stand here on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the original inhabitants and custodians of this land, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the many lands on which we meet today. I recognise their continuing connection to country, to waters, and to community, and to their identities which go back to the beginning of time. I acknowledge and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, and to all First Australians joining us here today. I accept the invitation from the Uluru Statement to work for a better future. My name's Peter Stevenson. I'm a partner at King & Mallisons in the dispute resolution team here in Sydney, and it's my absolute pleasure to be joining you by video to launch this UNSW Law Journal today. I'm feeling particularly excited because 2021 marks 40 years of the partnership between KWM and the UNSW Law Journal. This relationship is one that our firm is very proud of, and we are delighted to once again be the premier sponsors of the launch event. While we are unfortunately unable to celebrate the launch of the journal in person in our offices as planned, the firm is very proud to be supporting the journal as it launches its final issue for 2021. And on behalf of the firm, I congratulate Alicia Matthias, the issue editor of issue 44.4. This year's theme is filling critical gaps, and it's one that I personally feel very passionate about. I understand that the theme was chosen by the Executive Committee for two reasons. First of all, the 14 articles to be published are across a variety of legal issues, and most of them at their core identify a critical gap in the law, which is contributing to some injustice or inconsistency, and make suggestions about how to remedy it. In this issue, the journal is publishing articles which, amongst others, seek to revitalise employment status in Australia, consider how judges can better sentence offenders on autism spectrum disorder, propose a model law to regulate price gouging in times of crisis, and, very timely, design model voluntary assisted dying legislation. Second, in 2021, the Executive Committee of the Journal has been comprised of 9 bright, young and diverse individuals. With the recent news that women now comprise the majority of solicitors in Australia, the Journal is hopeful that demographic gaps in the upper echelon of the profession will soon be filled. The Journal does recognise, however, that there is a long way to go in authentically realising other forms of diversity in the profession. I know that in 1999, when I started my legal career, law firms both looked and felt quite different to the way they do now. I remember thinking that I didn't seem to quite fit the mould of a quintessential Mallees lawyer, and it wasn't just my lilac pantsuit. I was a graduate from ANU, I'd attended Lynham High School in Canberra, and I certainly didn't come from law. I came from a proud line of shopkeepers and public servants. I did, however, have the fortune of joining the dispute resolution team here at KWM, where there's not only a commitment to legal excellence and contribution to the law, as exemplified by our own Jeremy Chan and his contribution to this journal, but also we've had a clear focus and commitment to advancing gender equality. I've had a remarkable series of female role models as supervising partners who have provided me with mentoring and other support. I've been the beneficiary of open door policies from other partners as they've been willing to discuss career prospects and given me more than one gentle prod. I've also experienced this support and collegiality from other incredible women in the firm, including barristers, partners at other law firms and other legal experts. And all of these women have been so generous with their time, lending me an ear, sharing their perspectives. And this is something that I'm looking forward to doing for other women lawyers as I continue to progress in my career. Since joining Mallesons, our dispute resolution partnership has always been over 50% women. And I'm forever cognizant of the fact that we all benefit from the hard work that's been done from those that have gone before to get us where we are today. And I'm conscious of continuing to ensure there's equality of opportunity for all. I'm very pleased to share that at KWM in 2021, it's not unusual to come from any particular university, and we continue to focus on diversity of background in all its aspects. In fact, in our recent firm diversity and inclusion survey, we found that almost half of our legal population had been educated at public schools. Our people identify with 99 different countries and ethnic groups, speak 66 different languages, and 15% of us identify as LGBTIQ+. We are seeing our firm in the legal industry become ever more diverse and more inclusive over time. And we recognise we still have a long way to go to truly reflect the diverse communities in which we live and serve. And I personally feel really energised and excited about playing my part in the evolution of our industry. Thank you again for inviting me to be part of this special event, and please accept King & Wood Mallesons' congratulations on this virtual launch.
Can you hear me all right? Thank you, Peter. My name is Alicia Mathias, and it is my great privilege to introduce issue 44.4 as its issue editor. I would also like to begin by acknowledging the Bedigal people of the Eora Nation, on whose land we gather today at the University of New South Wales. I pay my respects to the elders past and present of this land and extend that respect to all First Nations people with us this evening as we celebrate the launch of issue 44.4. I am most honoured to be joining Tina in welcoming Ms Sonja Stewart as our keynote speaker tonight. We are very excited to have such a distinguished alumna of the university with us at launching this issue. A very warm welcome to Sonja, to our Dean, Professor Andrew Lynch, and to all our guests joining us both virtually and in person at this hybrid launch, in times where the only thing that remains certain is that nothing at all is certain. When I first sat down to write this speech, I was at a loss for words, which, if you know me, you will know is a rare occurrence. And so I scoured the archives for inspiration and made my way to the very beginning in more ways than one. That is, Volume 1, Issue 3, the graduation address by our beloved Professor Hal Wooten, the founding Dean of UNSW Law. And speaking to the first graduating class in 1976, Professor Wooten said the following: "This is the last time so many of us will be gathered together, and I am quite incapable of treating it as a formal occasion." And I thank Professor Wooten for putting into words what I could not. This evening means so much to me, partly because I wasn't sure until about half an hour ago that it would actually happen, but largely because it is the culmination of 15 months of work as issue editor, with some of the most wonderful, dedicated, hard-working individuals. And I speak, of course, of the editorial board. I joined the board in 2019, and in that time I have seen the coming and the going of many an editor. But what remains a constant is their passion for perfection, their love of the law, and their willingness to go above and beyond. I am so pleased to call you my colleagues and to call you my friends. The end of 2021 is bittersweet. We farewell many of our editors who are moving on to bigger and undoubtedly brighter things. But we also welcome 17 new editors who have already shown their skill and their enthusiasm. We can hold our head high as a student-run publication because of this board, and it is my privilege to have worked with you all. If you have seen a copy of issue 44.4, you will know why my friends jokingly refer to it as a tome. It comprises 14 articles produced by 28 authors on current topics demanding scholarly insight, and my immense gratitude goes to the authors featured in this issue. It still blows my mind that we have the opportunity to engage in such a meaningful way with such important scholarship. Thank you for your kindness, your humour, and your patience through what has been a very thorough process. We hope we have done your work justice, and it has certainly been our privilege. Thank you also to the veritable army of peer reviewers whose expertise and critical insight is instrumental to the calibre of work that we publish. Thank you to Kerry, our typesetter, John, our cover designer, and all those involved in the printing process. I must echo Tina's thanks to King & Wood Mallisons for their gracious support of issue 44.4. While we were unfortunately unable to be in their offices this year, we are grateful for their enduring support. And we're thankful also to Allens and HSF who have continued to support us throughout the pandemic. To the faculty of the University of New South Wales School of Law and Justice, I cannot think of a better institution to call home. Thank you for your support of the journal and your commitment to ensuring our independence as a publication. To our faculty advisors, Roz and Gary, thank you for turning our mountains back into molehills with your sage advice. Thank you also to Professor Andrew Lynch, our Dean, who has supported us without hesitation, including as we put together this launch. The value you place on the journal is reflective of the care that you have for the students of UNSW Law, and it does not go unnoticed. To my parents, Dan and Divya, and my sister Karina, thank you for your love and your patience through my incoherent ramblings and editorial hysteria. To all my dear family and wonderful friends, both near and far, having you in my corner through the highs and lows of this process has meant more to me than you know. There is one group of people who are probably sitting here and sweating, wondering if I've forgotten them. Quite the contrary, I am saving the best for last. We often joke that being on the executive committee involves both editorial and firefighting skills. And this year has proved that 1,000 times over. In fact, this speech has proved that 1,000 times over. The amazing members of the exec have risen to the occasion constantly. I start with a special thanks to my friend Kari, issue editor 45.1, who said to me in August last year, "Oh, you should definitely run for issue editor." Her support has remained steadfast, and I owe her a great deal. Thank you to Tina, our executive editor. You will not meet a more kind and humble leader who believes so firmly in what she does and works so hard to make the journal the institution it is. She is truly a force to be reckoned with, and she has been our constant reassuring presence this year. To Drew, Lillian, and Rebecca, the issue editors of Volume 44. This launch is not just a launch for 44.4, but a celebration of Volume 44 as a whole, and all your incredible work during a very difficult year, which I now know is no easy feat. I'm so glad to have shared this experience with you. To Caitlin and Arnie, the digital editor and forum editor. Much of what they do happens behind the scenes, but is so instrumental to the quality of the journal and our ability to publish current and timely scholarship. And as they finish their tenure, I would like to acknowledge the amazing work they have done and the good humour with which they have faced the many challenges of their roles. 15 months as issue editor is akin to a few lifetimes in the real world. And I don't just say that because I'm starting to go grey. I say it because I've had the pleasure of working in some respect across 3 executive committees. And my thanks must also go to the executive of Volume 43, under Antonia Shu, for welcoming me with open arms. And particular thanks to issue editors 43.3 and 43.4, Inderpreet and Chan, for their measured wisdom in times of crisis. And having now met and worked with all the executive committee for Volume 45, I know the journal is in the most capable of hands. Believe it or not, this was the abridged version of my thank yous. The original would have had us here all night, but I have used my newly honed editorial discretion to sharpen it. And with the thank yous having been appropriately thank you'd, I turn to the topic of this launch. I knew from the beginning that I wanted to finish this year of the journal with a focus on diversity, because it is something that I care about a lot as a young first-generation migrant navigating law school. I believe that there is great value in seeing yourself and the things that you care about represented in a discipline that is supposed to protect your rights and advance your interests. And part of this process is the unrelenting effort to identify and to fill critical gaps. It is such a privilege to be in a position as editors where we can engage with scholars who are seeking to do just this. Some of the 14 articles in this issue address pressing concerns such as the way we consider climate change in investment, or protect Australian consumers, press freedom, or victims of forced marriage. Other articles take long-existing legislation or doctrines and breathe into them new life so they can better adapt to the current needs of the people that they intend to protect. On the home front, we've made it our mission in 2021 to get the ball rolling on a number of initiatives to address demographic gaps within the journal. We've been so lucky to have an incredibly diverse exec and board. As Tina mentioned, we've worked to assess the diversity and well-being of the board through survey data and reflect it in our language and day-to-day management practices. We're also delighted to have expanded our recruitment policies, including with more transparent information sessions and the addition of an Indigenous recruitment stream. And we now work to encourage diversity amongst our authors and articles that we're going to publish into the future. All these measures seek to foster a more diverse and a more inclusive journal, which we hope will be reflected in the profession in the not too distant future. And with this preface, I would now like to invite our guest speaker, Ms Sonja Stewart, an inspiring advocate for diversity herself, to deliver the keynote address for this launch. Thank you.
I've got a bit of a croaky throat, so I'll see how I go, but it's great to see everyone, and good evening. So I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Law Society, and it's my real pleasure to deliver tonight's keynote to launch issue 44.4 of the UNSW Law Journal. Before I begin, I too would like to acknowledge that we're on the land of the Bidjigal and pay my deepest respects to country and those that have cared for it and nurtured for it for over 60,000 years. It always was, and it always will be, Aboriginal land. I'd also like to acknowledge Professor Andrew Lynch, Dean of UNSW Law and Justice, members of the editorial board and executive committee, faculties, advisors, and all the guests who've been joining us here tonight. Thank you. This university is a very special place for me. I was a student here in the 1980s and the first person in my family to go to university. I'm also a very proud mother of a soon-to-be fifth-year law student here at the faculty. Back then it was such a great time to be a young Koori student in Kensington, and I've got such fond memories both at the house at the top of High Street. I passed it on the way in today. A very generous woman bequeathed it to improve outcomes for UNSW's Indigenous students, and it was such a special place of belonging and care for so many of us. And back then, if you were a visitor to that wonderful house, you'd run into a younger version of me, but more importantly, a younger version of Dr. Terry Janke, who's now an amazing intellectual property lawyer, a younger version of Professor Larissa Berendt, who just on Friday, I think, won the Australian Human Rights Prize, the journalist, academic and filmmaker, and Dr. Anita Heiss, who's now a renowned author and social commentator. And it was such an amazing period to be surrounded by such strong emerging Indigenous leaders, as well as being backed by staff and faculty members. It was a very special time, and importantly, I'm still very good friends with them. I spoke to the three of them emailed over the last few days, and it's a very important part of my life that I've met them here and still treasure the friendships with them. The law degree that I graduated with, probably similar to yours, became a real launchpad for my career, and it's been a rewarding career in government roles, particularly at federal and state levels, but I've also had quite a diverse background in governance, on boards for 20 years, in academia, in government boards, and also in not-for-profit boards. And I've always really felt that helping people in solving problems was really important to me, and I still use my degree every single day of my life. From analysing and synthesising really large amounts of information, thinking at a system level, to communication and consideration of opportunities and issues from a client's perspective, and everything else in between. So the invitation to attend tonight's launch and deliver the keynote address was a really welcome one at a professional and a personal level. So the theme of tonight is all about filling critical gaps. And when I first heard of the topic, I really did wonder how I was going to address it, because I really tend not to think about gaps. I'm pretty much a strengths glass half full kind of person. I am a proud UN woman. My people are from the south coast of New South Wales, and as you said, it is quite unusual. I am the first woman and the first Indigenous person employed to be the CEO of the Law Society in its 180-year history. I'm also the first chair of the Go Foundation, an organisation that was founded by Adam Goods and Michael O'Loughlin, and I'm also the chairperson of Rugby Australians First Nations Committee. So I've spent much of my life thinking very deeply about obstacles and bridging gaps, and learning, very important as an Aboriginal person, you stand on the shoulders of those that went before you, and learning from others that went before me. But one of the things I find really most challenging that I wanted to personally share with you is confronting people's negatives, biases, assumptions and perceptions about Aboriginal people and what we can actually do. Too often there's an unspoken gap between what we're capable of and sometimes what our fellow Australians expect of us. That we could be CEO of the Law Society of New South Wales, representing 36,000 solicitors here, and it's one of the biggest and strongest membership organisations of the legal profession in the world. That we could be the chair of the Go Foundation and support over 500 Indigenous students reach their aspirations, or whatever Aboriginal people aspire to be. I've literally seen gaps emerge as people reconcile the roles I have with my Aboriginality, challenging and at times changing their perceptions. However, if anything, it's a barrier I find to themselves, a gap in their own imagination of being open and having views about what Aboriginal people can do. We are such a resilient people, 60,000 years continuous culture and care of this country, the oldest surviving culture in the world. We have so much capability and capacity. And so tonight, as requested, I am going to talk about gaps, specifically gaps in the demographic profile of the legal profession, but I'm also going to talk about some strengths and the efforts underway to bridge those gaps. So the legal profession is very much a growing profession. According to the latest National Profile of Solicitors, which is an initiative that my organisation leads across the country, the number of practising solicitors have increased by 45% since 2011. There are now 83,643 practising solicitors compared to just 57,000 9 years ago. But unfortunately, Indigenous enrolments and admissions have not ridden this same wave. In 2022, there were just 632 solicitors across the country that identified as Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander. That's 0.8% of the profession, and we make up about 3% of Australia's overall population. I'll also note that this low representation has been a consistent trend, so it's not like it's just dipped down, it's been consistent since we've been collecting the data in 2014. And we're not filling this gap. In October, I was really honoured when Andrew asked me to deliver the Acknowledgement of Country at the 2021 Hal Wooten lecture. And his portrait used to hang in this moot court, and I do remember that this used to be the temporary faculty for something like 20 years, wasn't it? And his legacy informs so much of what we do at this institution. In my remarks, I noted that while working alongside, elders, community members in Redfern back in the 70s, establishing the Aboriginal Legal Service, Professor Wooten asked questions like, why are there no Aboriginal lawyers defending their own people, and where are the Aboriginal law students? More than half a century on, and in light of the consecutive national profiles, we're still really striving to answer these questions. I believe that part of the answer lies in increasing the visibility of Indigenous lawyers, the men and women who are already part of this great profession. But yes, 632 solicitors is a major underrepresentation of my people, but it's also 632 truly amazing stories. 632 times where we achieved what we hoped for, and we just need to replicate that and do it at scale. In August, we set out to tell some of these stories at the Law Society with the launch of the blackout edition of the Law Society Journal. It was such a great edition, but we never actually formally got to launch that, featuring all Indigenous stories and interviews. A copy was sent to every Indigenous law student across New South Wales, including at this university. And I'm really, really mindful that if you can see it, you can definitely be it. And let me tell you, being the first, you never ever want to be the last. The profession is doing a lot better in other areas, though, particularly around gender. Not only has the profession grown by 45% since 2011, but women have accounted for 67% of this growth. 53% of solicitors, and now there's more women in every state in territory across the whole of Australia. That happened in the last profile. In many ways, it's to credits like the university here. Great numbers of women are now studying law at university and thus entering the profession at higher rates. Female law graduates have outnumbered male law graduates in Australia since 1993, reflecting a broader trend where women have outnumbered men in higher education enrolments since 1987. However, we're struggling to convert this record boom into fairer representation at the senior leadership levels. At the recent Advancing Women in Law Summit, the President of the Law Society of New South Wales, Ms Juliana Warner, explored this issue in detail. Delegates at the summit were really reflecting about a 30-year age gap from when women start entering the profession until they were promoted into senior leadership. And I guess the point is that you have to stay that long to be promoted, because retention is often a very key issue for women in the legal profession. Now, I know that there's always going to be gaps. No one is expecting a graduate to, enter the profession and become an equity partner in the first year. But I also think that there's a lot more we can do to accelerate that 30 years and that trajectory, and what can we do to shorten it. In March at the Law Society, Sam Mostyn gave the keynote at our International Women's Day celebration. And Sam and I go way back in our careers, and she was actually the chair that was ahead of me at the Go Foundation. I'm sure you know of her. She's a brilliant leader and a really innovative thinker. And you might have seen her just the other week at the National Press Club. She's the president of Chief Executive Women, and she delivered a great speech on a vibrant post-pandemic Australia. And at our event back in March, we were able to do that back then before that lockdown. Sam and I spoke directly to this issue. So she had a 3-year term as the chair of the board, and she stopped herself and she asked, we're an organisation committed to Indigenous empowerment, but was it right to see out her term for 3 years if there was a more suitable candidate in the room? And that candidate happened to be me. So I was elected chair shortly after that. And so my point is that sometimes solutions are not structural. If she was here, she would say, sometimes you've got to get out of the way and let others come through and their talent to shine and give them opportunities. So how's the profession doing in terms of cultural and linguistic diversity amongst solicitors? According to the most recent data, 28% of New South Wales solicitors were born overseas. This is lower than the general population, with the 2016 census showing that 35% of New South Wales residents were born overseas. However, we are tracking very well in terms of linguistic diversity. 1/5 of solicitors, so around that 20%, speak a language other than English at home. This is in line with the wider Australian population, where according to the 2016 census, 20.8% speak a language other than English. The top 5 languages in the legal profession are Mandarin, Cantonese, Arabic, Greek and Korean. The strong representation of Asian languages reflects another demographic trend. Of the proportion of solicitors born overseas, 44% were born in Asia. I'm happy to say that the Law Society of New South Wales has championed a range of initiatives to create a more diverse and inclusive legal profession this year. These include revamping our charter for the advancement of women in the legal profession, updating a guide to help New South Wales law firms and legal practices identify and eliminate discrimination and harassment in recruitment and employment practices in the New South Wales workplaces, and creating a new sexual harassment in the law portal on our website. We've also developed a new guide outlining steps that law firms and legal workplaces can take to become more culturally inclusive places, running mentoring programs, which I'm proud to say have continued unabated during the pandemic and in online format, and launching a new disability guide on creating a disability-friendly and confident workplace. We're working hard to keep our practitioners and creating really diverse, inclusive workplaces where everybody has the opportunity to shine and have such a rewarding legal career. So in many ways, the reasons for our focus on diversity and inclusion can be found in the journal that we're in the edition we're launching tonight. Issue 44.4 deals with the critical issues both for the legal profession and importantly for the citizens we serve. To paraphrase its editors, this edition explores gaps in legal frameworks on press freedom, forced marriage and responsible investment, proposals for better determining employment status, sentence offenders with autism spectrum disorder, and regulate price gouging, algorithmic collusion and voluntary assisted dying. There's critiques of native title and the COVID Safe app, I need to say not in the same article. And there's ways of reconceptualising legal instruments to protect or serve their intended stakeholders. I said at the outset I love to solve problems, but many of the problems we face, including many just mentioned, are very, very large and very, very complicated, and we need an edge to really solve them. In his 2019 book, The Diversity Bonus, University of Michigan professor Scott Page looked at the problem-solving power of diversity. He presents compelling evidence that teams that include different kinds of thinkers, people from diverse backgrounds, outperform homogeneous groups on complex tasks, producing what he calls diversity bonuses. These bonuses include improving problem solving, increased innovation, and more accurate predictions, all of which, of course, lead to better results. We want the legal profession to benefit from these diversity bonuses. This is a priority for the Law Society of New South Wales, and I know it's a vision shared by this great institution we're gathered at tonight. So if tonight's theme is filling the critical gaps, my final point is this. Filling those demographic gaps I've spoken about is critical for the ongoing success of the legal profession. And so, in a spirit of optimism and inclusivity, I'm delighted to launch issue 44.4 of the UNSW Law Journal. Congratulations to all the contributors, and well done to Alicia and all of the editors putting together this very fine edition in this very well-respected series. Thank you, everyone, and congratulations again.
Well, good evening. Thank you very much. I also wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathered, the Bidjigal people. These lands are unceded, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. I have the delightful job really of laying on thank yous. I have the vote of thanks, which is really intended for the guest speaker at the launch, but I never really stop there. There's so many thank yous to give, and I'm going to keep it quite brief because it was so delightful to arrive tonight and to see all of you enjoying each other's company in person, not looking to a screen, and actually connecting as a team who has worked so hard on this journal, not just tonight's issue, but as Alicia has pointed out, across all of volume 44. And I wish to congratulate all of the student editorial team for the amazing work that they've done. First, I do want to thank Sonja Stewart for her remarks tonight and in launching the journal. I think the theme of filling critical gaps is a brilliant one because there are heaps of those gaps to fill. I mean, and the weight and thickness of the journal just shows, and I'm sure you could do a sequel to this issue. There's more gaps yet. But I really appreciated Sonja's focus on the demographic gaps in the profession, and this is obviously a concern that the faculty has long held as well. Our model of teaching, in fact, reflects that diversity benefit that Sonja has talked about. Our classrooms are very much focused on what each student brings to the discussion, and we don't want homogeneity of thought. We want different life experiences, different perspectives on the materials that are discussed in our classrooms. And are under consideration. My own work and that of other colleagues focuses on judicial diversity, the ultimate team environment, and the work of courts. And Sonja's spoken a lot about the profession, and of course the profession provides that pathway to the bench. And the effect of diversity in courts is well understood as leading to very different processes and outcomes on occasion from final courts, particularly in the fields of rights protection. And that's something I think that, you know, the work of a greater diversity amongst the profession affects clients, it reflects the community, and ultimately it can find itself as a manifestation of the power of the state through the courts. So thank you, Sonja, for your remarks tonight, which have been so beneficial for us all to hear. I also want to thank the sponsors of the journal, particularly tonight, King and Wood Mallison, for their support of this issue, but also their membership of the trio of the principal sponsors, Herbert Smith Freehills and also Alan Slinklaters. The sponsorship of the journal makes possible the really remarkable work of the student editorial team in producing it, and the support of the profession, which, as was pointed out by Peter tonight, goes back many decades, is really remarkable and greatly valued by the faculty for the opportunities it provides to all of you, the students. I also want, obviously, to congratulate Alicia on the production of this very fine issue and all of you who have worked on it. It is no small task, obviously, to begin a 15-month period of editing. I don't know how you're going to fill that gap, Alicia. But also to the other issue editors of the year and Tina. It was lovely to meet Tina tonight. We've had emails ping-ponging across the year. And of course, like many people who have had a lot to do with each other in 2021, I wouldn't have been able to pick her out of a lineup at all. I've recorded previous versions of this in my kitchen for broadcasting. I hate to think about that. I don't want to watch them. I record them and I email them. This is much nicer. But congratulations to Tina for her role, for Alicia and the other issue editors, but all of the members of the editorial team who work on the journal. It's a remarkable and very fine thing for you to do in your time at UNSW to work on this publication. It has a long history. This is the faculty's 50th anniversary year. It hasn't really been the anniversary year any of us wished for. We wanted to do much more engagement with our alumni, with our students and with the profession generally. So it's been really lovely to hold this event and support it tonight. The journal is a large part of the faculty's history and a massive part of its continuing national and international reputation for intellectual excellence, and I congratulate and thank all of you for the role that you play in that. And I think without any further ado, the issue has been duly launched by Sonja. I think you should all celebrate, and I'll wrap up my remarks there. Thank you, good night.
Thank you, Professor Lynch, for delivering that vote of thanks, and thank you also to Ms Stewart for delivering that wonderful keynote speech. It was very enlightening, and I felt like I learnt a lot from your speech. Please accept these flowers as a gesture of appreciation for taking part in our launch. I think these are from Alicia's local florist, who specialises in dried flowers because they last longer. So this brings our proceedings officially to a close. Congratulations again, Alicia, and to the rest of the editorial board. All the articles of issue 44.4 can be found on our website at www.UNSWlawjournal.unsw.edu.au, and I hope to see you again soon at the launch of issue 45.1, where I will hopefully be attending as a general board member as I step down from my role as an executive editor. Thank you. Please go enjoy the canapes.